Welcome to another episode of Money Talks Unscripted. I'm your host, Pallavi. In this interview, the conversation is going to be unfiltered and unscripted. I'm happy to be joined by author, blogger, trainer, Amit Trivedi, who's written the book Sabse Bada Rupaiya, which we've reviewed. Go check out the review. I'm very happy to be joined by you, Amit. How are you?
Absolutely fine, Pallavin. Thank you so much for inviting me for this conversation. And also, thank you very much for the wonderful review of the book.
Uh, Pleasure was all mine. I really enjoyed reading all those dialogues because I am also a big Amitabh Bachchan fan, and I think you too are very fond of his movies because most of the dialogues that you've quoted are from that 1970s era.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I'm not sure if I've come across anybody who's not a big fan of Amitabh Bachchan. And personally, yes, a huge, huge fan of Amitabh Bachchan.
So tell us, was Amitabh Bachchan the bigger inspiration behind the book, or was this something that was there in your mind for quite some time, and one day you finally decided that you're going to combine all these dialogues? How did this book happen?
So, yes, Mr. Bachchan was the inspiration. One of the days I was, going for a morning walk, and next to my house is a very large auditorium called Sharmukhananda Auditorium, and there was a poster celebrating the 75th birthday of the superstar of the millennium, Mr. Amitabh Bachchan. So it set me thinking: can I write something about this? And was trying to figure out what to do. The birthday, 75th birthday, was just 4 days away. So in 4 days, what can you do? And some inspiration, whatever you call it, influence of Mr. Bachchan or whatever it is, or Bollywood. I wrote an article, 7.5 lessons from the films of Mr. Amitabh Bachchan. Now,
Okay.
7.5. So obviously it is 75 divided by 10. So it came at 7.5. But where do you get that half lesson from? So I took 7 lessons from films, the big screen, and 1 lesson from KBC, the small screen. So that became the half lesson. So that's
Oh,
how it
great.
became 7.5. The article was published in Midday Gujarati. Appreciate, and it actually was printed on 11th of October, so 75th birthday. So we could manage to get it that way. It was a full page article, highly appreciated by a lot of people. I got some fantastic responses. So encouraged by that, I went to the publisher and asked them, should we do a book? The publisher jumped. This is a wonderful idea. Nobody's done it. So let's do it. And then I started searching for more stories.
You've picked up examples of movies and an era where in the mainstream at least people didn't talk about finance, so it's quite
Right.
it's very intriguing, it's very contrasting to understand that we've picked examples from the time where people didn't really talk about finance as such. They were not really much into keeping a good portfolio, or for that matter being aware
Yeah,
of where their money is going. So in the
yeah.
current era, you think people in the current generation, would they be able to relate with your book?
So the book is heavily influenced by Mr. Amitabh Bachchan, but then there are other stories. And then I tried to cover different generations. So the first story, the earliest movie that I picked up is Sri 420, 1950s. And the latest that I have picked up is Secret Superstar, just a few years back that movie had come. So it has a very wide range of movies, and it should appeal to all generations.
In fact, all the dialogues are very epic, and everybody knows that from whatever the generation may be. But we want to understand that you've written other books also, which are not in this format.
Sure,
You've written a book on equity
sure.
markets, which we reviewed some time back. Tell us
Yes,
which
yes.
still remains the most popular book. Like, you attend a lot of workshops, you organize a lot of workshops, you meet a lot of people, big gatherings. So what is their response? Which one remains their favorite?
Uh, the first book probably had the first mover advantage, and riding the roller coaster, the title of the book,
Mhm.
people have associated the title with me.
Okay.
So even in various discussions, when somebody mentions about a roller coaster,
Mhm.
some of the heads turn towards me. So apparently remains favorite. But the best book, if I were to say, then probably Invest Stories, the fourth book,
Okay.
is according to me and my
Mhm.
personal opinion, because over the period I have improved as an author.
Right, right.
So my writing style has also undergone a change, and that's where the work becomes better.
Mhm.
Now, Riding the Roller Coaster is a continuous book dealing with history of financial market events, and then collating all the lessons together towards the end. Invest Stories has 30 different stories
Mhm.
of history, I mean, of various events that took place in the financial market, and
Right.
each story ends with a moral or a lesson.
Mhm.
So the formats are different that way, but in terms of writing style, I think Invest Stories is better. But the closest to my heart is, of course, my personal story, which is Personal Finance Lessons from the ICU,
Okay. Okay.
simply because that's my life's story.
Just talking about stories and your knack for storytelling, tell us what inspires you to get these unique ideas, besides movies. What else, like, do you perceive everything from this point of view, that you watch a movie or you read an article? What is it that goes on in an author's mind, if you could tell us
So, Pallavi, I am not educated in the subject of finance.
that? Mm-hmm.
By education, I'm an MBA in marketing. And before that, I did my engineering.
Okay.
So, finance was only one small part of the entire curriculum in MBA.
Mm-hmm.
But never really took that subject seriously. So now, when you are not taught a subject and you enter the financial services domain, way back in 1993, I got my job in finance company.
Mm-hmm.
So now it was like when you are thrown in the water, and now you have to start learning how to swim. You are already inside the water.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you do? So you start to pick up things, and in that process, I started looking at my own way of learning, if I were to put it that way. So
Okay.
it was not in a structured way of learning. It was bits and pieces picked up from here and there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what also helped was in my childhood days, my father used to encourage. Even in those days, it looked like it was unaffordable for him to buy so many books, but he still continued to buy every year
Mm-hmm.
a very large number of books for us, and we used to read a lot. So when you read so much, you tend to start connecting things which may look apparently unrelated.
In many
Yeah,
places, when we search for your name or we search for your bio, we see that you yourself call yourself as a student of life, right? So
yeah, yeah.
yeah, so that's very interesting that you have a background of people around you all have been into teaching, academics,
Yeah.
and you call yourself as a student. So tell us,
Yes.
in your journey as a student, you said that you didn't read or learn about the subject of finance as such, but you developed a knack for it and you started reading. So tell us, people who would like to know about money, but those who are, very scared of these jargons and all, how should they start? Like, if somebody were to, have that kind of a knowledge or understanding, and they want to start with the basics, what could be the, two or three things which they can take care of, and how do they start their reading journey?
So I would actually, this is a slightly tough question, because what should they start reading? I would say just go back, a step back, before we come to what kind of books that one should read.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Essentially, the entire subject of money management
Mm-hmm.
is about spending money.
Right.
Okay, so whereas popularly people believe that it's about investing, it's not really about investing, it's about spending money. Because why do you invest? You invest today because you got some surplus after spending, and that surplus you deploy in a manner so that you are able to spend sometime in future.
Mm-hmm.
All the discussions about financial goals that we do, what are financial goals? Eventually financial goals are deferred expenses.
Right.
So the subject is about spending. And
Mm-hmm.
for that matter, the moment somebody says I'm not comfortable with finance,
Mm-hmm.
the person is only saying I'm not comfortable with a small aspect of finance called investments. How
Right.
many have ever said that I'm not comfortable with spending money?
Nobody.
Nobody,
Yeah.
right? So nobody is uncomfortable with spending money. We all
Mm.
spend money. And when do we learn spending money?
Mm.
Right from childhood.
Right.
So if we learn that, then what are we uncomfortable with?
Mm.
We are only uncomfortable with one thing, which is I have surplus money.
Mm.
And now that I have this money, I don't want to lose that money.
Mhm.
That's the fear. Now, if that's the fear, then one has to start, picking up some of the. You reviewed some of the very fine the books on the subject of personal finance. Also, some of the authors have written some wonderful stuff. Something like what Kalpesh has written, yours financially. You reviewed that
Right.
book as well.
Mhm.
So that, according to me, is a brilliant book because it's written in a story format and
Yeah.
it explains bad behavior and good behavior both.
Right. Right.
Beautifully penned book. So somebody can straight away pick a book like that, or maybe a book like Sabse Bada Rupaiya, which is an easy read. It
Right.
gives you a lot of concepts. You can keep reading any number of times, or you can just leave it halfway and think about whatever one has read. So these
Mhm.
are some of the books that you can pick up. But my sense is the subject of money is an easy subject.
How big a role can a book play in changing that mindset that we talked about in this discussion?
No idea. Actually, no idea. Because there are a lot of people who read, there are
Mm.
a lot of people who don't. Right?
Right.
So, if I were to look at myself as somebody who wants to spread messages,
Mm.
I'll have to use multiple medium.
Okay.
Yeah, so if I'm able to do that, it helps. Uh, I got my limitations, but yeah, books have made a difference. For Sabse Bada Rupaiya, the biggest compliment that I received was from a financial advisor whose client wrote to him saying his teenage son
Hmm.
had got into some bad company
Okay.
and almost got himself into trouble. Finally, so he had borrowed money from some not so good people, and finally he had to sell his mobile phone to pay off the debt. The moment the mobile phone went away, the boy had some time, and the parents took the help of Sabse Bada Rupaiya, the book, and started reading chapters with the son. And in 2 months, they started seeing positive difference in the life of the son. I think I couldn't have asked for a better compliment than that. So, can a book make a difference in someone's life? Live example of my own book, and I really feel very, very grateful to those parents also who use the book to change the life of their son. I feel grateful that the son also took the benefit of whatever one could pick up, and life got changed. Okay, I can't ask for anything more than that. Can a book make a difference? Yeah, yes, it can. If it changes one life, good enough. If it
Okay.
changes
So
more,
that
much
makes
better.
me want to ask one more question. Can you recall the book that changed
Sure.
your life? Maybe a book that you read and you felt a greater impact on your own life.
I would name three books.
Okay.
The first is Bhagavad Gita. Again, being in a kind of family that I grew up with, my parents, my grandparents used to quote Bhagavad Gita very often, and we read it in the house. But at one point in time, sometime in 1998, I had hit a low point in life, and at that point in time, I could have picked up anything,
Mhm.
okay, good or bad, and by a divine design, I picked up Bhagavad Gita, and there was a turnaround in my life. So Bhagavad Gita is one book that made a huge impact in my life. The second book that I believe has made a very big difference in my life is Who Moved My Cheese. It's about change management. Whenever I picked up that book, it's a very small book, of fable about mice. and how their life changes. So when changes are imposed externally by somebody, how do you respond to that? Who Moved My Cheese is second book. And third book is by a guy called Simon Sinek, a management guru. The book's name is Start With Why. And he says, whatever you want to do, ask the question, start with the question, why? Why do you want to do this? Why do you want to think in this way? Why? When you start with that why, then again, once the objective is clear, then things start falling in place.
Thanks a lot for this interesting session. And thank you, all the viewers, for being with us. And go check out the other reviews. Next week, we'll come back with another review, which is Dohanomics, which is again a very unique idea how we can get inspirations from Sant Kabir and get inspired before Diwali. Thanks a lot, Amit. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Pallavi. Thanks a ton. Pleasure talking to you.